Welcome everyone and all to Unite Battle Hub for today's Pokemon Unite action. I'm Digital Bacon, joined by Kanashi, Mad Magical. Guys, how are we doing? Let's start with you, Kanashi. How are you doing today, bud?
I'm doing good. Different time zone over here in the US. It's like 10 a.m. So, it's good to actually be up before noon, I think. And to watch some Pokemon Unite. It's been a while for me. So, looking to get back into the ring again.
Yeah, it's early.
Hey,
No, but I'm West Coast too. I'm in California, so it's 10 a.m. here as well. And then I got an overnight shift later tonight, so from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. that I got to do later, which means after Unite, I'll be taking a nice little nap. But hopefully I'm not too energetic from everything that we have today, because I'm excited to cast some more Pokemon Unite.
it's the wildlife of caster, right? Like night times, like bedtime. What even does that mean? That's not in our dictionary. But looking at this right now, the teams in our tournament, whilst most of these are going to be new names to a lot of people, some might be even a little bit of a mix-up, like your Yala without Bingo. We've got famous names, like everyone that you know within the community, whether it's Globe, Snow, Utah, you know, everyone knows these players, and we're kind of in this weird off-season, dare I say, limbo, you know, where a lot of these teams are kind of playing this men because of the money. You know, we've got $500 on the line. That's a good, you know, chunk of change in the main event. Win today, well, then you get qualified straight in for it. Top four, of course, in the main event will be going home with a chunk of that money. But right now, you're just trying to earn a spot. Winner of today's single elim bracket, guys, will be going through. I think most of the people are going to be looking at Yellow without Bingo, A3, and Snow as your favorites, but we've seen a lot of like newcomers come to the top. Let's just put in Portugal has really risen to sort of like the cream of the crop, it feels, in the final few months of UCS. And who knows, during this off season, we could even find some new names, couldn't we, Kanashi?
Yeah, and that's the thing that's so fun about these elite tours. You get a bunch of teams that are either trying new things or trying to figure out what works best for them, and really experimenting in these kinds of fights. Like, even though they are trying to just play for a spot in the big tournament, it's always good to try out some of these newer comps and possibly newer roster spots, with all of these new players who may be trying to break in and, you know, make their name before the next UCS scene.
And of course, Magical, we've got the Ho-Ho buff coming on the line very, very shortly. So this could be like... Right, so this should be a pretty refined meta coming in today. People should know what they're facing up against. Should also then, in turn, know what they need to ban.
Yeah, and we have been seeing a lot of consistency with certain bans, such as, say, that Slowbro that we're seeing hovered right there by Party Girl, something that has been kind of consistent for the defenders. We've even seen a lot of that Blaziken that has been taken away by so many people. Phalanx as well, being absolutely a terror in the current meta. There's just these ideas and these Pokemon that everyone is saying, okay, we can't let these through no matter what. Maybe once in a while we see like a Slowbro or a Blaziken make their way through the fan phase, but nothing like Phalanx will ever really get through.
Interesting as well at Kanashi, because Phalanx, most people have been thinking, you know, is a pretty easy counter with your Venusaurs and all of that, but Phalanx seems to have kind of broken that counter to them. It's been shown as a real serious threat, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's one of those funny things where it's like, on paper, this should be a counter, but in practice, it could be something very different. And I find that, one, coming down to the confidence of the player who's playing the Phalanx, but also just not being afraid, understanding the kit, and trying to utilize that to the best of your advantage, especially heading into this pick ban phase.
Gyarados really strong right now on the opposite end, going for more foundational Pokemon in Hooper and Umbreon. How are you liking this so far, Magical?
I like seeing Hoopa a lot. As someone who comes from other MOBA games, I love the mobility that Hoopa allows for teams around the map. And I think having something like an Umbreon, especially if you go for like a main look, to lock people in place for a long amount of time, especially something that's a lot more susceptible, such as, say, a Gyarados early on into the game. But the big thing for me is that bird right there. Cramorant, I think, has been one of these picks that everyone has now realized is really good, and that everyone is now starting to pick up like as a must play. and it's not in the build that everyone thinks that it would be with going for Surf and a Hurricane. This is something we'd seen already in previous metas. Right now, especially like we looked over towards the NA qualifiers last week, and we were seeing nothing but the Dive Air Cutter, which is my personal favorite as a Cramorant main. That is the build that I always advocate for.
Yeah, it's definitely not something that you see every day, but under, like, when it comes down to these kind of mid-range Pokemon, especially if you could, like, keep that attack speed buff moving your way, you could kind of shred through a couple of these more squishier Pokemon. So it depends on their mobility, how well they could get in, but I do think it pairs really well with that Umbreon.
Oh, see, I'm actually looking at it pairing well with the Cramorant. I was talking about the Dive Air Cutter build, and you have something that dives right alongside you with a guard jump. That's why I'm like, I love it. I love it.
Right, lads, as I'm going to leave you to cast this one, just got to say, Evolution's back in the mix. It's been a while, Kanashi, since we last saw Espeon and Glaceon in the throw, but we know Sylveon is very high meta at the moment, don't we, buddy?
Yeah, we do. We just understand that the kit for Sylveon is just really helpful with a lot of these teams. So yeah, evolutions are back. Early level spike getting to that level 4 will really help out a lot of these teams. So I'm really excited to see how well they're going to be playing out here.
Me too. I think that this is going to be really exciting. I was already talking about liking the Umbreon having that lockdown potential if you go for a mean look, but I know we're all focused on the evolutions, but I just cannot get over the Cramorant Garchomp combination. The dive, just go and attack the backline as much as possible, then constantly move around these fights just makes me really excited to see what's going to be brought here by Party Girls.
Yeah, I feel like the mobility is going to be really big in this matchup. But like the game within the game right now is not only just, oh yeah, hit opponent Pokemon, make them faint, right? But also, where do you position yourself? How do you make sure that you don't get hard dove on here? How do you not get caught in mean look, but also still be effective? That's a lot of things that Funa has to really think about in this matchup here.
As right now we do see a little bit of an invade here. Hoopa trying to cause a little bit of chaos, make it a little bit harder to get towards that first evolution. But it's not going to really stop anything too much. Took a little bit too much poke initially.
Yeah, it's just the threat of it being there. Now they're forcing the rotation, the Gossifleur out here just chipping away, saying, oh, it did get away with a little bit of a steal, takes the buff and just speeds out of there. So a little bit of disruption slows up the tempo just a little bit, but we'll see if it could be effective heading into the top lane.
Oh, but having to use the eject button out and then using the eject button to follow up, you don't often see that from a Magikarp getting the KO. It's usually when you evolve right there and forcing Aki back, continuing this dive in the slow, but getting them far away so they can start getting these dunks in top path.
Yeah, really good aggressive play and just understanding of your limits. Now, we'll see if Gyarados can get out of here, being chased by 3, but did get the evolution, which is big. Going to be able to trade that out for the Gible as well. So overall, Party Girls just trying to get the levels up. Meanwhile, Funa just having a good tempo with the Gyarados already here before the 2-minute mark.
Yeah, and I like this already for Funa. I was a little worried because of that steal that Aki got earlier with the Hoopa, but all of that kind of was negated by a good use of the eject button to follow up, pick up the knockout, and now we see how Funa are controlling this top path with another knockout, getting this Gyarados really out of the races.
Yeah, just pushing the tempo really quickly, just trying to grab whatever they possibly can and keep those levels up, keep that effort level up, and try to be a threat, especially heading into these first objectives.
And with all this power in the top path, now we're starting to see that rotation into the bottom path. They did get the knockout already onto Wartortle, but it was traded back, so now 1 for 1. A couple more points should be secured, but Glaceon's there, trying their best, pass the eject button away, and it's scared off, taking way too much poke here, and even getting KO'd right in the slow field.
Yeah, gonna just continue on this onslaught of scoring. Funa just trying to control the tempo, trying to make sure that the Hoopa can't do much. The Eldegoss just narrowly escaping by the skin of their teeth, but it looks like the Cramorant is trying to deal a little bit more of the damage here. But Party Girls is just got to figure out what they want to do heading into this bottom part here.
They are struggling now. They had that initial window right at the beginning where it looked like they had this good momentum, but everything has shifted back over to Funa, and now they are contesting this Regirock. It's been taken down to 50. We see Umbreon on the other side. They get the first KO onto War Turtle. It should be secured by Funa. Now the engage continuing to go into the back, getting them all away, and this is Party Girls partying in the bot path and getting a lot of points. They should be able to collapse this point and continue this hunt inside of the slow field.
Yeah, that was just an unfortunate spin, you know, Party Girls being able to secure the Regirock, getting the defense buff and just taking the initiative at that point, saying we have this defense buff, we might as well go in, take the fight, and now they're pushing the tempo a little bit more.
Ooh, but I like that right there. We're gonna keep Gyarados on Regieleki, because at first I thought that it might have been a bit of a dicey call there, just having the solo Regieleki. I thought maybe Party Girls would rotate in time to contest that, get the knockout, steal away Reggie, and that right there would be the finishing blow for Funa. I don't think there's much you can do. The momentum would just be absolutely absurd for Party Girls. But the fact that they were able to secure that now means they can group up as a team. We got the Gatling Gulp, the dive away, but Magikarp and Gyarados, they're a little bit far, having to be careful. They get a lot of that shield right now, but the dash away, they're the ones with all 5, but they're the ones threatened in this play.
Yeah, they're getting pushed away quite a bit just because it's tough for them to really find a pick off here. As we start seeing some of the Dragon's Rage also coming out, there's Psychic Solaire to go ahead and chip up a couple of them. And Glacial Sage about to be popped, going to actually be denied here. So Funa now starting to look for even more opportunities to kind of flip the switch after losing the Regirock here.
Got a couple dashes back, getting the slow, another Dragon's Rush away. They're getting poked out, but fact that we do see that Party Girls get back to their point, get the shield, so they won't get knocked out this time around, but a Hurricane does get the knockup onto Blastoise just to try to get out of this one. Continuing the chase with the dives from Cramorant, and with Sylveon using that Hyper Voice, getting a lot of damage on Umbreon, meant that they couldn't continue the hunt any further.
Yeah, had to commit the Fairy Frolic to get out, but I do think it was okay to not commit the trade there. The thing that I was keeping an eye out for was the Blastoise hitting level 9. I didn't know if they were going to go ahead and use that in order to go ahead and find a fun pickoff or not, but it looks like we have a rotation from Party Girls. Going to go ahead and take out the Regice and still keeping those objectives going their way.
With 5 seconds till Regieleki's up, does seem like could just be a simple trade as Funa already on the top path. Pretty much securing this one. Even if we do say that there are a couple numbers of Party Girl in the vicinity, I think they're a little bit too late to actually try to contest that. That's why they fall back immediately, seeing the notification go, okay, we have to defend the point the best we can, get everyone in rotation, and you can see now there are going to be 4 members here on the top path for Party Girls. The dives away to stay as safe as they can. Gatling Gulp getting a lot of damage back onto Blastoise and keeping them at base, so no defender to defend the front line of Funa.
Yeah, they might have to go ahead and leave, head back, and I'm trying to figure out when this next engagement is. You know, we're at that 4-minute mark. This is usually when the Unite moves start popping off. There's a couple of them starting up here in this 3-on-3 engagement, but they're all looking to possibly try to hold them back here with a mean look, but it's just not going to end up happening. But yeah, Funa just trying to figure out when they want to initiate, when they want to use their Unite moves. That way they can have it back up by the final stretch here.
I feel like it's almost like Party Girls are trying to bait out some of these Unite moves, as we are about a minute and some change until we have our Rayquaza spawn on to the map. And that's going to be a big point. The fact that we saw that a lot of Unite moves had been used previously by Party Girls and continue to be used in this top path, trying to get as much as they can before they have to fight around Rayquaza. They got the chase down, the knockup as well. It is going to be a trade of 1 for 1, or is it going to be even more? Because Funa completely turned the tides.
Yeah, Funa turns the tide. It's going to be able to grab 4, and now it's just the Umbreon versus the world, just trying to deal a little bit of damage or whatever damage it possibly can, but we don't know if they have enough pressure to keep this up. Still being contested, stops the 50 score from going through, which is really big for them, but it looks like Party Girls is returning back here. This might be more dangerous for Funa, now that the respawn's got not only the entire team of Party Girls back together, but right before the final stretch, this could look really scary.
They got the KO onto Blastoise as well. Blastoise will be back up. And we look at the level discrepancies. And for the most part, it is fairly even outside of the Espeon. Funa having a level 14 Espeon is going to be massive for the team. And as long as they can utilize that, utilize the attacker in the back line and keep them safe, keep the peel there on top of Ryan the best they can, Funa have great windows to win these fights.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to how well a Psychic Solaire or a Hydro Typhoon is going to be coming through. If they could find a really good opportunity to lock up the Cramorant or the Garchomp, it could spell disaster for Party Girls.
Hey, locking up the bird especially, I think, is going to be a big one. Because getting rid of something that can do all that damage, especially from range, or get rid of something like that Glaceon you were kind of talking about. We saw how much damage Ryan just did. Having that level advantage forced that early recall, and now getting towards this Rayquaza. We got a minute and some change until that's back up. While Garchomp was fighting against Gyarados in the top path and lost the 1v1 duel, that the rotation might make it an even 1-for-1 at the moment. But no, Gyarados survives, gets out of there one. And now the rings have been unbound. Hoopa is big, looking for the punches, trying to go Hadouken on everybody, but they're trying to get the damage they can with the Typhoon. The Typhoon on the other side. One knockout. It is now officially going to be 3 down. Make it double knockouts for Cramorant as they turn on into the Dragon, and they will take Rayquaza.
Yeah, they're going to go ahead and take that up. Party Girls really locking up game number 1 after that, after the Hoops Unbound brings everybody back. And yeah, at first I thought, okay, Funa had a plan, having the Gyarados kind of force a couple rotations, allowing the rest of the team to either go after the rest of the team or the Ray, but Party Girls just made a really good adjustment in order to not only pick up the Gyarados, but be able to collapse in afterwards.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that was kind of like the linchpin. The fact that Gyarados had survived initially made it seem like Funa could have won the fight. But the fact that there was that attention that had been already thrown towards the Gyarados, chasing them away, they couldn't join the rest of the team. The collapse back, so it was a 5v4. It allowed Party Girls all the ample opportunity then to get on to Espeon to kind of take away the power structure that had been built up by Funa.
Yeah, as we get into our final scores here, looks like 708 to 175. Overall, pretty good scoring, pretty good aggressiveness coming out from both sides here. We saw a glimmer of hope coming out from Funa and Party Girls in moments, pretty much neck and neck, trading out a couple of objectives here and there. But once it came down to the Ray fight and those last couple engagements, just really solidified where Party Girls wanted to play.
And I think that for Funa, it's not like this game was lost, from the get-go. There were definitely ways they could have won this game, and we look at how a lot of these earlier fights were, where it was neck and neck. It was back and forth between the two sides. Funa would get advantage. Party Girls would kind of wrestle it back, go back and forth, especially around these points. But ultimately, it was just one small difference, one small fight right at the most important objective of the game, being that of Rayquaza, allowed Party Girls to take this game 1.
Yeah, I also think that like them being able to win that first Regirock fight at the bottom really stabilized them. Like
Yes.
Even though it was really early, we had Funa already having those early pushes with the Gyarados. And we got to see that, but once Party Girls got the first engagement down in the basement, Reggie, it really helped them with their levels. So I really do think that helped them out quite a bit.
And we see this is kind of like the fight that I think really cemented their win. The fact that they had gotten rid of Gyarados initially so they could rotate down into the central path and allow themselves a much easier time, because now you have where this Gyarados is in an awkward spot away from the team. You have the 4 members that you can easily get on top of. And they had already used their Unite moves initially kind of like on the onset, so they didn't have those to then turn their attention back. And so once you talked about like the Hoops Unbound were there for Hoopa, you have all this AoE damage that you're able to get for the team, kind of separate the fight even further. It makes it even more difficult for Funa to really operate.
Yeah, and I just think that they played the micro and like the micro game pretty well. It wasn't just like we're gonna take certain fights; it's we're gonna find certain pickoffs that could help us win this. And yes, I do agree that like overall the match was pretty even across the board. I don't think that there's gonna be any major adjustments heading into game number 2 from Funa. I think that if anything, you want to stick to your guns. You want to play something that you're comfortable with. Maybe use the pick bans to your advantage, and we'll see what ends up being the options here.
They have decided that they are going to swap sides, so Funa will be on orange, Party Girls purple, with a similar kind of ban we've been seeing for a long time, Phalanx. We were talking about it briefly, the fact that, yes, there are the counters for Phalanx, but it feels like everyone in the current meta is just like, it doesn't matter if he has counters. We're taking it off the board. We don't even want to deal with it in the first place. And same with kind of Trevenant. We saw there were the nerfs that happened to Trevenant not too long ago, make them so they didn't deal nearly as much damage, but they're still a great defender. We see them pretty much permanently banned, but Slowbro has made their way through the ban phase this time around, so I'm imagining Party Girls immediately lock that in.
Yeah, we'll see if that is going to be their top priority to go ahead and do it. It looks like the hover and the, yep, there it is, the Slowbro going to be locked in here. So the defender roles are going to be kind of limited. You take away Trevenant, you have Umbreon off the table, now Slowbro's off the table. So if they do decide to go for it, it's probably going to be Blastoise if it is going to be the call. But Funa really has to make those decisions, especially heading into this earlier part. Oh, the Crustle. Yes, we got the crab.
Yeah, get the crab. I mean, you kind of see the crab show up every once in a while. I feel like Blastoise has kind of still been that like next ring of defenders that we've been seeing after like Slowbro and Trevenant. The Crustle has kind of made their way through every once in a while. Lapras is another one I personally really like, but not going to see that in this one. I think that the Crustle does help out with separating a lot of these fights, depending on how you really want to operate. The only problem is going to be the bird. I think that Cramorant, the mobility that we've been seeing with the dive builds that have been kind of now dominating the meta for Cramorant, have made it so a lot of the power normally Crustle would have has been kind of taken away.
Yeah, it really depends on how well you could corral people with the Rock Tomb. And especially following it up with the X-Scissor, it depends on how well you can lock down a certain target. But with the mobility of the bird, it's going to be a little tough to do that. It looks like they are going to deny the Garchomp just by taking it off of the table. Going to be selecting it up, but the Lucario is going to be their option this time around. Funa has the last pick, and we'll see what they want to go for here.
Surprised it was the Lucario, not the Gyarados in this situation. Thought that might have been the option here. Something that kind of goes well against that Garchomp. But Lucario, I don't mind Lucario that much. Oh, okay. I thought Absol was actually going to be... Absol is a really good pick into Cramorant. But Talonflame's also really good into Cramorant. Something that can stick on top of the bird, especially with the mobility that we're expecting to see with the dive comps. But then the damage, just the raw damage you have on a single target is going to be really nice.
Yeah, so that, I feel like with Talonflame, it's going to be really important for them to be able to not only protect it during these fights, but make sure that it could dive onto the right target. If it finds the Cramorant and bursts them down quickly, I think that's going to help them out tons. But it also depends on how well they can split up those levels heading into the earlier part of the game, because they want to keep that tempo up.
Yeah, they have to keep the tempo up. It's so important to make sure that you are getting ahead, because Cramorant not having to evolve does give them that little bit of that boost early into the game, even though it's kind of funny, as something that doesn't evolve does kind of like the late game stages as well. But it's something that you have to kind of be on top of. You have to make sure the Cramorant isn't thriving in these early stages so that they can't even get to the later ones where they do even better. The mobility, the insane damage that they can output in these fights when undisturbed is going to be outright ridiculous for Funa to deal with if they don't stop it quickly enough. Exactly.
And we saw how well Funa really comes out of the gate. We saw it how well they played with the Gyarados last game. They like to hit hard early. I just think that if they just clean up around a couple of the objectives, it could flip the way how the game is played for them. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye out for that as we're heading into game number 2 here.
Heading into game 2, and it should be an exciting one here. It was very close between the two teams last time around, between Party Girls and Funa. Unfortunately, we did get a little bit of a pause there, so we do apologize. We'll be getting back into this game as quickly as we can. But I kind of just want to keep talking about how Funa can really attack in this game, because we looked at the last game, and I think you also talked about a really good point, that Regirock fight early on, and how important that was for Party Girls because it stabilized them. And that was something that Funa were really relying on, was to pretty much destabilize the matchup, make it so that they could snowball early, get out of control, so when eventually the Rayquaza fight happened, they were so far ahead it wouldn't matter. I think this game is even more imperative with how they've built their composition to really undermine what has been drafted by Party Girls.
Yeah, I think that Funa does really well with tempo, and it really did halt after that first Reggie, the first basement Reggie. So I do think that that's going to be a play that Funa is going to circle. They're going to be like, okay, we need to get the tempo working for us and continue up with that pressure, especially heading into, once again, the Cramorant pick. It's going to be pretty much one of their only real late game picks on that team. So they need to lock down the Cram, make sure that that is going to be the number one target to pick off. And if Funa could keep that tempo, I think that they'll do pretty well. They might take it to a game 3 here.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to see a game 3, especially because I believe this is single elimination. So this do or die. When you get into these situations, you're already down. It's best of 3. You gotta win every match here against Party Girls if you want to retain yourself in this tournament and keep moving forward. And so here we go. We are back onto the Fair Sky Ruins between Party Girls and Funa Marius